Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 73 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Pablo Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we will look back at the weekend that was in Road America. Also look ahead to this upcoming weekend's race at Atlanta. We will have our news and notes segment coming up later on, as well as our Ask David segment at the end of the show. As always, we are presented by TicketSmarter. TicketSmarter came aboard as the primary sponsor this year on David's 08 Ford Mustang. We're going to tell you a little bit more about what they do. TicketSmarter is a national ticket resale marketplace with tickets to over 125,000 live events, including NASCAR and other forms of motorsports. Fans can get tickets to every NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Camping World Truck race throughout the season. Visit TicketSmarter.com for more. That's TicketSmarter.com. David Starr joins us right now. David, we'll get to Tyler Reddick's win in just a moment, his first career win at the Cup level, but nonetheless, you had a good 4th of July weekend down in Galveston, right?
Man, it was awesome. Went down there. It's and we needed some R&R time, me and my boys and my wife, and spent it in Galveston on the coast there, fishing and swimming in the beach, and stayed at San Luis Hotel. And man, a beautiful resort there, the pool. It was just a great time with the family, and it was well needed, that's for sure. But man, what a great weekend of racing at Road America. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, big time win for Tyler Reddick, his first career win at the Cup level. Dominic Aragón from the RacingExperts.com joins us right now. Dom, Tyler Reddick, this was a long time coming. He's been so close so many times to getting into victory lane, and he finally got it done. And what a way he did it. This was an earned win, getting by Chase Elliott there with 15 laps to go and holding serve in those final laps. A great performance there from Tyler Reddick.
Anytime you can beat a road racing champion, a past NASCAR Cup Series champion, you're doing something right. And he just out cat and moused Chase Elliott in that final stage on Sunday at Road America. Tyler Reddick ran one heck of a race, Tyler. And I think it just goes without saying, too, seeing him stay in line with Chase Elliott. That race did not have a natural caution. And through that third stage, which included a green flag pit stop, he stayed hand in hand with Chase Elliott, ultimately was able to make that pass, made a clean pass, and he earned that win. And I think Chase Elliott said it best, too. He would know because Chase had so many second-place finishes. Reddick had five second-place finishes before that first win. Hey, he earned it. He earned that win today. And it's, again, when you can beat somebody who is considered the current road racing master in the Cup Series, you're doing something right.
And we've seen Tyler Reddick race so well everywhere, from the Bristol dirt to what he's done on ovals and now getting a win on a road course. And David, one of the things that you've talked about for a while with Tyler Reddick was once he gets that first win, that the others will be somewhat easier. More wins will follow. Do you think we're going to see Tyler Reddick in victory lane again in 2022?
Man, I think so. I think we're going to see more. He's just such a great race car driver. And, Richard Childress Racing right now, I mean, it seems like Tyler Reddick is really he's been so consistent all year. And like you were saying, Dom, 5 top, second runner up position. I mean, 5 times. And, you run that well, that consistent in the top 5, your wins are going to come. And I think this is just the first of many more to come. He's such a great race car driver. He was great when he first came on the scene in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but it looks like to me that RCR is really, getting this next gen race car figured out, and Tyler Reddick's, with his ability and his talent level, man, I mean, there could be a force to be reckoned with there for the championship this year. And but man, I'm not surprised. I mean, we talk about Tyler Reddick a lot on our show here, and you knew it was just a matter of time. And I didn't see the race Sunday because I was busy at the beach, but I did. I watched it for about 10 minutes, and it was the time that Tyler Reddick took the lead with about 15, 16, 14, whatever it was, laps to go. And man, you could tell he was following racing with Chase Elliott, and it looked like those two guys were the class of the field. And man, like you said, Dominic, he passed him clean. And I watched it for about 4 or 5 laps after the pass, and he just pulled away from Chase Elliott. And like we were talking about, I mean, when you can pass a reigning champion, former champion, and one of the guys that's considered a road racing ace current. I mean, Tyler Reddick did something special, but I don't think any of us are surprised as he's been there week in and week out. So just glad to see it. And I think there'll be many more to come, even before we get to the playoffs.
The thing that stood out to me, Dominic, was that when you looked at Tyler Reddick the last 2 seasons, we all know that he can run up front and lead laps and that he can be in contention. But whether it's his own fault or his team's fault, whatever it may be, that number 8 car has not been able to finish races up front. They have not been able to get the job done. And that's not to blame Tyler Reddick or the team. I think it's been a little bit of both, quite frankly. And for them to put him in position to have the pit stop and the pit strategy for him to be up front, and then for him to execute on the racetrack, all of that coming together, that felt like a lot of frustration finally put away. Like they finally got the monkey off their back of finishing that race the way that they did.
Well, I think of 2 races this year that stand out that Tyler Reddick, right? We always say it coulda, shoulda, woulda won, but Auto Club, the Fontana race early on, led the most laps, won both stages. Didn't work out in their favor. I believe it was a mechanical issue. And then, of course, the Bristol race leading 99 laps, having the spin out with Chase Briscoe on the last lap and getting edged by a car length by Kyle Busch at the line. I think all of that culminated, and I think there was a lot of frustration, like you said, but piecing together a full race, a full run, all 3 stages executed perfectly. Green flag pit stops executed as best as they could be on Sunday. RCR did it right. Tyler Reddick did it right. And here we have our 203rd different NASCAR Cup Series race winner. And guys, our 5th different winner in 2021. That's a first-time winner in the Cup Series. Got to think back to 2011 or 2000, or even as NBC pointed out on the broadcast, this is the first time since 1950, the second year that the sport was around, that we have this many new winners at this point in the season.
It's remarkable. And one thing I look at, David, of the first-time winners that we've had this year, guys that waited a minute, right? Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez. Now, Chase Briscoe was the second-year driver. Austin Cindric, a rookie. I'm missing one other name. Ross Chastain waited a long time coming. With those 3 there, the guys that waited a while. David, I'm curious what you think about this idea. For me, one of the things, and you've been one of those guys that went from trucks and Xfinity to Cup. It seems like that one of the hardest transitions for these guys is the length of these Cup races. You don't run 400, 500-mile races at that Xfinity or truck level. And it's like in football terms, if you were going to play another quarter of a football game, it is a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
How and we've seen with Chase Elliott, he didn't get his first career win his 3rd season. Kyle Larson didn't get his first career win until, what was it, halfway through his 2nd season or 3rd season, something like that. Is that a big adjustment for these guys, just the length of these Cup races as opposed to what they're used to running?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you asked that question. I just think, man, we're used to running 300-mile races. The next thing you know, you're running 500-mile races or 400-mile. Cup is 400, 500-mile races. But I don't know. It's a tough question.
That seems to be the common theme with those guys is finishing races.
Yeah, but man, it's a team sport. You know what I mean? It's the racetrack's changing. You might start the race the first and second stage, your car is great, and the temperature might change. There's so many variables. But I would tell you that pretty much all the men and women that race in NASCAR, whether it's the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, the Cup Series, these guys are unbelievable athletes. And, from a physical standpoint, I think they're all ready to run 500 miles. I don't think that's a big issue, but it's hard to really answer that question. Just so the race is so long, and whatever, when the race starts, that first stage compared to the last stage, I mean, it might be night and day with how your car drives, but we see it week in and week out. A car is really strong at the beginning, leading laps, and you get to towards the end of the race, and it's a different car. It's not as good, or vice versa. You have a guy that we didn't even consider that was going to be a contender in a race. I mean, he was back running 20th. The next thing you know, as the race plays on, man, the team, the driver, the engineer, the crew chief, they start making the right adjustments. The next thing you know, wait, where'd he come from? So I don't know. It's just it's a tough question, and I don't have the answer for you, Tyler, because I think any race car driver from a physical standpoint can do 500 miles. But it's staying on top, keeping up with the change in racetrack, making the right changes in the car. So it is a possibility, but I really don't have the right answer. But when you're used to running 300 miles and you go from 300 miles to 500 miles, it is different. It's a lot longer. And sometimes just I have never run full-time cups, so it's hard to say. But from what I'm seeing over the years, it looks like there's a little bit of a learning curve. And what that learning curve is, I'm not so sure. I think it's such a team sport. And man, once everybody starts hitting on all 8 cylinders, look what happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Dominic, we talk about, we mentioned kind of the big jump that it is the Cup of these length of races, but the competition too. This year we're seeing so much parity in the sport. You mentioned 5 different winners, 13 different race winners so far this year, and just finishing out races. I think that the stage racing has been a big benefit for guys like Tyler Reddick, where we recognize how good Tyler Reddick is. He's getting those stage points. Ross Chastain has just as many playoff points as anybody else does this year. I mean, these guys are competing, but now getting to that next step of closing races, that's what we're finally starting to see from these guys that we weren't necessarily seeing before. I mean, that's where sometimes the veterans, where maybe they didn't lead the most laps, but they found a way. Kevin Harvick was known for that name, the closer. Kyle Busch. How many times we talked about Alex Bowman in the last couple of years? I mean, he's a veteran now, stealing wins, if you want to call it that. Now we're seeing those younger guys are figuring out how to seal the deal and get it done in crunch time.
They sure are. And I think too, you brought up a great point there with the stage points and collecting those. If you look at the playoff grid and all the winners that have won a race this year on the Cup side, every one of these Cup winners is at least won at stage at some point during the season too. Usually, right? Because you win a stage, you get 1 playoff point. You win a race, you get 5 points. But these guys have 6 points or 12 or 13 points, 7 points. And I think it's just fascinating. You see these guys that are running up front. And while we have a lot of parity, there tends to be a lot of consistency with these winners. The only 3 drivers that have won a stage and haven't won a race yet would be Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex, and Bubba Wallace. But I think the fascinating thing even further with that, to show that consistency, look at Ryan Blaney, look at Martin Truex Jr. They've both won 5 stages apiece. So that's the equivalent of 1 win, and they still haven't won a race yet. So there's a lot of consistency at the front of the field with the guys that have won. And I want to say, guys, I think our next winner is going to come from one of those 3 drivers, because they're the ones that are leading the laps. They're the ones that are being up front. And Bubba Wallace's pit crew could put a whole race together, we'd be seeing him up more front too.
I really, I believe the next gen car, just a completely different design race car from what we had last year, is really helped the parity of our sport, and you look at, Trackhouse Racing. I mean, sophomore year, what is it? They had 3 wins so far in 2022. I think in the past, to have a new team, a team that's only been in the Cup Series for 2 years, I don't think we would have ever seen that. You know what I mean? With the powerhouse teams of Joe Gibbs Racing and Roger Penske and Hendricks. just so much technology, so much engineering, and man, they were just so much further advanced than a lot of other teams on setups and aero and just, creating downforce underneath the race car. I mean, it's amazing what this new next gen car has done to the sport. I mean, we're not seeing, we saw Chase Elliott and Hendricks is still a force to be reckoned with. And I think Penske is too, but man, it's really changed up. I mean, there's so much parity and we hadn't seen this. And I think, Dom, you mentioned it since 1950. I think that's what you said at the start of the show. Is that correct?
That's correct. We haven't seen this many first-time winners 18 races into a season since 1950. And I'll give NBC Sports credit on that stat. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is
wild.
It is wild. And I think it just comes down to, we know the powerhouse teams, and this next gen car seems to have kind of changed that, has, the parity and brought the field together, evened up the competition. Who would have thought that we'd just sit here and
tell me this then, David, along the same lines, with knowing that the manufacturers have more control than they've ever had, essentially. It's more about them than it's been the teams in a while. But then also, with the separation not being very big either, the driver has more control now. It's a lot about the driver too. Is there more pressure on the drivers or the manufacturers right now?
Well, it's I would say the drivers. It's to me, the cars are, as long as I've been involved and you guys involved, I think the cars are so equal, more so than I've ever seen it, and the pressure's on the organizations, it's on the teams, it's on the drivers, to be able to answer a question, is there more pressure on the manufacturers or more pressure on the driver driving the cars? I really don't have an answer for that, but man, it just seems like the parity we have and watching this year kind of play out.
He already answered it and said drivers. Don't let him
is really interesting. You know what I mean? But it's really cool. I like I said, having this many new winners and the parity we're seeing, I think a lot of it has to do with this new race car that NASCAR has designed and built, the new next gen car. It's no doubt about it.
Dominic, so far through 18 races, the next gen car has been really good. I think better than any of us could have anticipated. There's been some bumps along the road. It hasn't been perfect. I think there's still some work to do in the 1.5 mile program in particular. But if you had to grade the next gen car, if you had to put a letter grade on it, I'll even let you give a plus minus grade as the teacher among us, the professional grader that gets paid to give out grades. What would you give the next gen car?
Yeah, I don't know all about all of that, but I would say like a B plus or an A minus. Is it perfect? Like you said, no, nothing's going to be perfect. But NASCAR, the manufacturers, the chassis company, the drivers, we're putting on great shows. We're seeing great races. I think that all has to get accounted for. The parity, comers and goers. This is what it was like in the 90s, right? Where you'd see guys at the beginning of the race and fade and guys that would come hard charge at the end of the race. I'd give it about a B plus or an A minus. I'm curious if you guys would agree or disagree with that.
What about you, David? How would you grade the next gen car?
Man, I totally agree with Dominic. When there was, we all heard all the rumors and, over the last couple of years about the next gen car, and a lot of it was some negative rumors, but man, I tell you, NASCAR and the manufacturers and the teams, and there was so much testing going in, but man, I tell you, once the season kicked off this year, that new next gen car hasn't disappointed. I mean, we all know anything new design, new everything. You're going to have some challenges, and there's been challenges, no doubt about it. But the racing is incredible. I think the racing is even better than what we've seen it in the past, and it's been unbelievable in the past. And I don't know. I'm like Dom, B plus, A minus, an A. I just think it's been great. You know what I mean? Is it perfect? No, it's not. And as time goes on, it gets even better and better as the teams learn, the engineering side, NASCAR learns. There's some issues, some challenges. They'll make changes, but man, it has not disappointed. So I definitely agree with Dominic. A B plus and A minus is a great grade.
Yeah. I would bring up too, one of the reasons I'd give it an A minus on top of everything you guys said, the safety factor. I think there was some legit safety concerns about this car entering this year. We're 18 races in. Has there been an injury? Has anyone seriously gotten hurt? No. Knock on wood. But so far, it's passed all the safety tests, and we've raced everywhere. Road courses, mile and a half, short tracks, super speedways, and everyone's been okay. And everyone's walked away, and it has passed the safety test. And that's an important thing that we can't underestimate, that we can't, just shove aside with these cars, is the safety factor. And so far, it's passing the safety test from what we've seen at this point. Guys, looking at the playoff picture right now, Dom, 13 different winners, as we mentioned. Nobody has more than 2 wins on the year. It doesn't feel like there's a clear favorite. In the season, all about parity, there's not an established favorite leader when it comes to this playoff picture right now. This is anyone's ballgame right now.
And I know as of Tuesday, right, Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, they're your co-favorites to win the Quaker State 400 this weekend in Atlanta, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I was telling you guys too, just combing over the points and looking at the situation too. I look at somebody like Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. Yeah, they may not have the most top 10, top 5 finishes, but they have been taking the stage points. They've been earning stage victories. I look at those guys as maybe your next guys that break out. But you're right, Tyler, 13 winners, 18 races. I mean, again, we talked about this last year. We had 10 winners to open the season, or 9 different winners to open the season. But we talk about it every week here. This really does look like this could be the first season where we have 16 winners entering Daytona. That's uncharted territory for the Cup Series under this playoff format since they introduced it in 2014.
I think it'd still be a stretch to get to that point, but it's possible at this point in time.
Because look, Ryan Blaney hasn't won. Martin Truex hasn't won. We're coming up on road courses. Christopher Bell, Michael McDowell. I don't know, David. Do you think we're going to have 16 winners at Daytona?
Man, I mean, it's possible. I'm hard to say, but man, you think of Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex to think that they haven't even won a race by now.
Kevin Harvick hasn't won.
I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's truly possible. But we'll see. I mean, only time will tell. But man, it's amazing. I mean, we might have 16 drivers. Hell, there could be winners that don't even make the playoff. You know what I mean? With as it's going. But man, anything's possible. I mean, who would have thought it? We'd have been where we're at right now this year. You know what I mean? So it's exciting. It will continue to be exciting, and man, it's just a lot of people are paying attention. A lot of interesting stuff going on. The racing's good, and it's every week. We just can't wait for the Cup race or the NASCAR race, truck race or Xfinity race either.
And in that scenario too, if there are more than 16 winners, then it comes down to points. And so, I was thinking about this, Dom. We've had this whole idea of you win, you're in the playoff, you're good to go. Now, I wonder, does strategy at all change yet? Are you starting to think about points? Are you starting to think about, getting those stage points and all that, maybe more so, or is your focus still on trying to get wins too? I wonder if your driving style changes at all right now. I think that's probably a little too premature, a little too early, but I wouldn't be surprised later if we start seeing guys more so make safe bets and point race here.
Well, I think we kind of already did see that a little bit happen at Road America this weekend, because with that caution, or before the caution for the stage break with 2 laps to go in stage 1, Chase Briscoe stayed out. Austin Cindric stayed out. They wanted to collect as many points as they could, because I think that's all in the back of everybody's mind. There is a chance we could see more winners There's a chance a guy who won a race in the regular season gets bumped for the first time in Cup Series history since the implement of this era. The other question I have for you both, and I don't know if either you know the rule, but I looked, I couldn't find it, and I know it was in the rule book at one time that if you're the regular season champion, regardless of how many wins you got, you would qualify for the playoffs.
Yes, that is.
Ryan Blaney's 30-some points back. If he were to win the regular season championship without a win, he could make the playoffs and yet bump another potential driver with a win. So I'm pretty sure that's still the rule, right?
That is still the rule, because Denny Hamlin was in position last year where he was almost the regular season champion, even though he didn't win a race in the regular season. So yes, that is another possibility as well. Blaney would have to make up, 37 points is almost a full race. So a lot of points there, but nonetheless, certainly possible on that front. Moving ahead, looking to this weekend in Atlanta, David, Atlanta is completely changed. We saw a hell of a race earlier this year where they turned Atlanta into a super speedway, basically, just a little bit shorter than a mile and a half. It was action-packed. Crowd was a sellout, largest crowd in 20 years out there. I mean, it was unbelievable the show Atlanta put on. I'm excited to see what they could do for an encore here.
Man, I'm excited to see it as well. And man, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be in the Xfinity race and, talking to Jason Miller, my crew chief, we're just talking about, the first race we didn't compete in because of the way the weather worked out, no qualifying, no practice. They just lined them up and race. It set us out for that race in those circumstances that you can't control. But man, it was amazing. The fans were there. The racing was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I'm looking forward to racing there. And I think the racing is even going to be better. I mean, it's in thinking about Atlanta from earlier this year, it'll be hotter. I think the racetrack will be slicker. So it's going to be an interesting race. But it races like a super speedway. It's like Daytona, Talladega. But man, unbelievable to have a racetrack, a mile and a half racetrack race like Talladega or Daytona is incredible. I'm so excited to get back in my race car and go race there. And I think we're going to see the same thing. I just think we're going to see an awesome race out of all the races, and it'll be exciting.
Well, let me ask you this, David. So, of course, super speedway racing. Do you personally, are you and your team approaching this like a typical super speedway race? What's your strategy, or without revealing your full hand, how are you approaching this weekend?
Well, I mean, it's we're talking a lot about the weather, how hot it's going to be, how hot the racetrack is. And even though we didn't race the race, at Atlanta, we were there, we were paying attention, we were educating ourselves. And, a lot of people brought, super speedway type race cars, less drag, not that much downforce, less drag cars. And, a lot of them, after they ran, 10, 12, 13 laps, they couldn't run wide open. It was a little bit of a handful, and now I believe the racetrack it's going to be hotter. I think when you got racetrack temperatures heated up, the temperatures look higher than it was earlier this year. You start losing grip. So, a lot of my conversations then with Bobby Dodd and Jason Miller is, are we taking a car with really not that much downforce in it, less drag, all speed, or do we need to focus on really having a great handling race car? So a lot of conversation. We've been talking about that this week, but anytime any racetrack races like Talladega and Daytona, you keep up in the draft, it makes it exciting. And what I saw at Atlanta for the inaugural race with the reconfiguration of the track, it was over the top exciting, and I think we'll see that again this weekend.
I would love, Dom, for this to be the future of mile and a halves. Mile and a halves, it doesn't matter if it's been the next gen car, the old car, the COT, whatever. Mile and a halves are probably the worst product NASCAR has. In all honesty. Short tracks, road courses, super speedways, all better than mile and a halves. But this is exciting. This is entertaining. This should be the model. Maybe not every mile and a half, but I would love to see more mile and a halves do what Atlanta's doing here?
I don't know if the drivers would agree with you on that, but I will say this. I was talking with Jeff Bodine about the Atlanta race after, and of course we'd gone to see him after, and we're talking about the race. What did you think about it? And he's like, what race are you talking about? I said, it was a race. He goes, it was entertainment. He goes, there's a difference. It was more entertainment than it was a race, but nonetheless, it was very exciting. We all agreed. But yeah, I don't know if the drivers would agree. I think William Byron would agree with you. I think he would agree that it was very entertaining and exciting. I think Ty Gibbs would agree too, but I don't know if 25 other drivers would be agreeing with that statement. I don't know if car owners would be agreeing with that statement, but nonetheless, I do agree it is very entertaining.
Yeah, I would like to see it. It would be fun if they go this route. With that said, looking ahead to this weekend, who are some of the names that come to mind? Who are going to be some of the favorites that you're watching for besides the defending race winner William Byron here, Dom?
Man, I think I look at guys like Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski. Ross Chastain had one heck of a drive in the March race where he fell 2 laps down. The team worked with him. They got the free pass a couple times, and he muscled his way back to it. At that time, his career best finish, a second-place run. I look at guys like that to make some noise on Sunday, and I think some of your guys that need to pick up some stage points too, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that stage end coming, 5, 4, 3, 2 laps to go. A lot of dicey racing drivers like Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric, guys that want to make sure they have a lot of points.
David, is this the way that Atlanta is configured? Is it an equalizer like we talk about with Daytona and Talladega too? Is a Michael McDowell or somebody on these smaller teams, do they have a shot like we would talk about them in Daytona or Talladega?
Man, I just sitting here listening to y'all talk. I was just thinking about Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, these guys, when you come to super speedway racing, you know, these guys kind of step up to the front of the pack, you know, especially Ricky Stenhouse Jr., you know, but it'd be kind of interesting to see. Would it be kind of cool if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could win the race or Michael McDowell? I mean, you know what I mean? And I mean, it would be amazing. But
McDowell's been hot lately.
He has been. It'd be awesome to see him win a race. And man, you know, it's hard for me to have much input on how the racetrack drives because I was not in the March race with the inaugural configuration. You know, I was listening to drivers, I was studying, I was paying attention, but you know, until you're out there drafting and racing in it, it's hard to really comprehend how it races. You know, what I see and what I'm listening to, you know, it seemed like it was a Daytona type of a race, but you know, you really won't know until you run your first race there. But man, it was interesting. It was a lot of drafting, and you know, one lane would move, then it'd stall a bit, then the high side would move. So it's, I mean, it was just amazing to kind of see a Daytona Talladega style type of race at Atlanta. It was amazing. And I mean, I've never seen that many race cars on top of each other at Atlanta Motor Speedway. You know, it was amazing. But, you know, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to getting my TicketSmarter Ford and competing and to see how it races. And just, I'm excited. I can't wait. But you know, I do know to follow up what we're talking about, it will be an exciting race because, man, in March, it was over the top. And I hadn't seen that many fans and people excited about the Atlanta Motor Speedway like what I saw. The energy there was unbelievable. So I just know it's going to be a great weekend. And man, I'm glad to be back in my race car and looking forward to it.
Dominic, you know, one more thing on all this before we shift gears here. This is not a knock on Road America, but it felt weird that we weren't at Daytona for the 4th of July. I know that NASCAR put Daytona at the end of the regular season to make things interesting, but now that Atlanta's got it figured out, let's go back to Daytona for the 4th, and let's put this second Atlanta race at the end of the regular season. That, to me, would be a great compromise.
That would be pretty fitting. And for a long time, the Atlanta second date was held right before the chase started, 2005, 2010. It was the race prior to Richmond. So it was always around there. It'd be kind of like you're filling in an old friend where it should be. I think that's a great idea. Daytona and NASCAR, 4th of July, that's a great tradition. And I'm all about jumbling up the schedule like you guys are and putting different puzzle pieces where they go. But Daytona in July has a very special place with, I think, the drivers, the team owners, the fans, and the media. There's something special about that.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was really surprised when, when they I mean, July 4th is, always, I was really shocked when they took that away from Daytona. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just feels right. You know what I mean? As a competitor,
Right.
Everything about it, it's just, it's American, you know what I mean? And I'm going to agree with Tyler. It's like, man, even though I was down at the coast in Galveston, having a great time with my family.
You'd rather been in Daytona.
Oh, absolutely. I'd rather been in Daytona. No, hey, I love my family, but man, obviously I'm not racing the road course races in 2022. I'm okay with that. But man, being there in Daytona, man, would be awesome.
Great point there, David. And we will move on, get to our news and notes segment, which is presented by TicketSmarter, the official ticket resale marketplace at Worldwide Technology Raceway, where David won in 2004. And they had their first cup race ever this past season at that track. And TicketSmarter was the presenting sponsor at that track back in June. Fans can also get tickets to any type of event, including sports, concerts, and theater productions. TicketSmarter is committing to helping those in need by donating $1 from every transaction to various charity organizations. Head over to TicketSmarter.com to find tickets for upcoming events. That's TicketSmarter.com for more. Dom, a lot to get to on the news and notes side, and a feel-good moment for Ryan Newman this past weekend.
Ryan Newman is a winner again at the national stage. Ryan Newman picked up the win Saturday night in the SRX race. It was the first time Newman had a national podium win since 2017, where he won the Cup race at Phoenix. So Newman is now the points leader at SRX with 3 races to go. And I think he had said before the race week, and he was on a Zoom call with reporters, and he was jokingly, halfway joking, halfway serious, that he's been reaching out to Mr. H at Hendrick Motorsports, would love to get back in a Cup car and would love to do it with Hendrick, but that's probably not going to pan out. But SRX is where he wants to be right now. And guys, he won the race, and now he's the points leader.
How about that? Newman, man, I think about 2 years ago, we were all convinced he was dead. And now he's winning races on a national level against big names like Tony Stewart and company. And he's leading the SRX points as well. What a turnaround for Ryan Newman, especially considering the struggles he had recently to end his NASCAR career.
Well, I mean, you said did, but man, Ryan Newman was a great friend of mine and a hell of a race car driver. It's just, I think about the parity of the Cup Series that we've been talking about and this new next gen race car. It seemed like the last 5 or 6 years of Ryan Newman's career, the team he was driving for, it just, they struggled. And, for him to step out of the sport with this new next gen race car, I mean, I think he stepped out a year too soon. I think if it had worked out for him to be driving for whoever, I really thought we would have seen Ryan Newman back into victory lane, because let me tell you, man, what a great race car driver. I mean, he is so talented. I mean, watched him in USAC midget cars, USAC sprint cars, and he's really, really good. And, to see him win the race the other night ago was SRX series. I mean, I'm not surprised by it. You know what I mean? And I'd love to see him back in the Cup side in NASCAR with this next gen car, because I think he would be a force to be reckoned with with the right team, so I hope Mr. H calls him back, or we see Ryan Newman back on the Cup side. He's a good friend of mine, his family. We've been buddies for years, and I really think he could win on the Cup level still.
Dominic, when you look at the competition, we mentioned Tony Stewart, Greg Biffle, Elio Castroneves is running in that. He won the Indy 500 last year. I mean, I think SRX initially was kind of viewed as a retirement series of sorts, but the competition's been really good. I mean, if Newman can be running up front like that and leading the points, I mean, there was some criticism. I mean, towards the end, people thought he had lost a step. I'm convinced Newman still has something left in the tank if he's competing at a level like that.
He sure does. I mean, let's be honest. That last year at Roush didn't have the best equipment, and Brad Keselowski is a product of that this year, taking the team over. And you can see that Keselowski, who was a champion of the NASCAR Cup Series, struggling to finish 20th every week. So we know it's an equipment issue. But you're right. I think there's still that drive and that competitive burning desire that Ryan Newman has, that he still wants to be a competitor. He still wants to go out and win. He wouldn't be doing this if he didn't think he could go out and win. And he beat some really, really good names in that SRX field. And you're right, it's not just a retirement series. I think of guys like Ernie Francis Jr., a lot of these short track ringers at their specific tracks that come in and run these events. He's going toe-to-toe with some of the best and some of the best in their prime as well. And he's winning.
Yeah, real quick on SRX, David. So far, they're halfway through their season. They've had sellout crowds every week. Ratings have been pretty solid, close to 1 million viewers for every race. It's been exciting. I know Tony got frustrated with some of the damage to the cars a couple of weeks ago, and he had that altercation with Ernie and all that. But SRX, it's not a long-term product. It's not something that's going to go on weeks on end. But for what it does for its purpose, of just the 6 weeks, the short tracks, so far they look like they've done a pretty decent job.
Man, when you got national network covering you, that's pretty awesome. And like we're talking about, man, the talent level, the diversity of talent, all not just NASCAR, IndyCar, road racers.
Grand Am.
There's amazing the talent, and we're talking about the SRX will pull in a local hero from that racetrack that knows the racetrack, know how it races, knows how to get around it, knows what the racetrack's going to do as you run longer on it. The trends of the racetrack. I mean, there's a lot of things when you have a local hot shoe or a local champion that gets an opportunity to run with Tony Stewart and Biffle and Ryan Newman. I mean, it kind of puts them at an equal playing field. But man, this is a great series. Like Tyler was saying, 1 million people tune in on NBC. I mean, it's amazing.
CBS, yeah.
I'm sorry, CBS. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I guess I underestimated it when it first aired, but the racing's been incredible. Bill Elliott, Chase Elliott. I mean, it's just amazing. And a lot of people are tuning into it. I'm hearing a lot of race fans talk about it, and man, it has not disappointed, and it's kind of cool, we race on Saturday afternoon, and man, you get done, you take a shower, get some dinner, and I want to go sit in front of the TV and watch the SRX race. You know what I mean? Because it is definitely entertaining, and to see Biffle out there and see Ryan Newman out there and Stewart and Elliott Castroneves and the IndyCar guy Paul Tracy. Man, it is really cool. But like we said, it's man, there's so much depth of talent in it, and it makes it interesting to watch, and it has not disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not built to be a competitor to NASCAR. It's not what Live Golf is to the PGA Tour. It's not like that. It serves its purpose, Dom, for the 6 weeks, 6 Saturday nights in a row, short tracks. I hope it's here to stay for a long time. It's a good product and serves its purpose for the summertime.
Would you guys agree with the point that maybe it's IROC 2.0?
I mean, IROC had better drivers. I mean, so I wouldn't say that, but it is similar to IROC. And IROC raced on all sorts of tracks, not just short tracks like SRX. But I can see the similarities.
Yeah, you could see the similarities, and the race cars are all the same. They're prepared the same.
I will say those are some ugly looking cars, though.
Yeah, it's I would agree with part of that, Dominic. It's another IROC series, but that being said, the product is great. The racing's great. It's entertaining, and man, it's fun to watch. So if you want to call it IROC, or that's fine. I don't think many of us would disagree with you, but the product, the racing on the racetrack is spectacular.
Yeah, it certainly is. Dom, what else we got?
Some great news for Tyler Reddick. We had talked about it on the show last week, but he is staying put. He's not going anywhere. Tyler Reddick will remain at Richard Childress Racing through at least 2023. So according to NASCAR.com, they're reporting that Reddick said next year's all taken care of. He's going to be racing for RCR, and that he glances ahead periodically to 2024 when he's not guaranteed a ride. But all signs are pointing that Reddick's going to be staying put for a while and possibly beyond 2023.
So we talked about last week, according to Bob Pockris, that RCR is picking up his option. That was a team option. And then after this year, he is an unrestricted free agent. And I would imagine that he'll have plenty of suitors, that it's going to be more so RCR trying to keep him than him trying to stay at RCR necessarily. But with that being said, Dom, is there any pressure you think on Austin Dillon? I know that he's Richard's grandson, but that 3 team is not even close to performing to the level that 8 team is. And I think that, for years we looked at, with comparing Austin Dillon to whatever driver was, that it was an organizational issue. Now you can point to, okay, one is way different than the other here. I mean, is Austin Dillon going to be held accountable, you think?
It's a great question. I don't know, because Dillon has that longevity in the 3 car. He's been able to win the big races like the Daytona 500, the Coke 600. He almost won the Coke 600 this year. Had he not gotten turned there in the travel, we might be talking about Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick in the playoffs. But it's hard to say. I don't know. I think, David, you could give a better perspective on that as a driver. I mean, certainly Austin Dillon's got to be thinking he's feeling a lot more pressure now that his teammate has won and he hasn't won in 2 years. There's definitely got to be a little bit of fire under that seat.
Well, I just look at Trackhouse Racing, look at what Ross Chastain has done, the consistency, how fast the race cars are being. And you look at Daniel Suarez. I mean, he's just been just as fast as Ross Chastain, but the races ain't played out into his favor with some bad luck or this or that. But, on the RCR side, to me, the 8 car is unbelievable week in and week out, and I don't see that consistency with the 3 cars. So, it's kind of interesting. Same organization, same equipment, same motors, obviously it's 2 different crew chiefs, 2 different drivers, but man, you look at other organizations that have multiple drivers and they kind of match up some, you know what I mean? I mean, look, Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, I keep going back to, and you look at the Hendrick organization, but man, it seems like the RCR organization with their 2 drivers. I mean, we're just talking about, the contracts and keeping him. I think Richard Childress Racing will be doing everything they can to make sure they can, they can sign him for years and years to come, because I think he's kind of he's the guy there. You know what I mean? He's so it's kind of interesting, but man, I would say, if I was the other driver, I would, I'd be wanting to get to victory lane or be a little bit more competitive than what I have been.
Pressure's on Austin Dillon.
Absolutely.
Even if he is Richard's grandson. If Austin wasn't Richard's grandson, we all know he wouldn't have that ride right now. I mean, that put it simple as that. Austin did win an Xfinity title without winning a race too. And so maybe his future is more suited, down another level or something. We'll see. But nonetheless, Dom, anything else we need to get to?
Nope, that's it. It's time for our picks for Atlanta, or at least our preview for Atlanta before we get to the picks. It'll be the second race at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend with the Quaker State 400. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott are both co-favorites as of early this week to win this weekend in Atlanta, but it's a big question mark. The race is like a super speedway. What about Austin Dillon, Michael McDowell, Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex, Kevin Harvick, guys that haven't won a race yet this year, Brad Keselowski. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be racing up front that we don't typically see, trying to collect stage points, trying to go for the win. It's going to be like March. It's going to be a very good, entertaining race. You guys agree?
My pick, he almost won the race the first time around. He made a crew change this week. I'm going to go a little off the radar. Give me Bubba Wallace to get it done in Atlanta and get his first victory of the year and secure a playoff spot. Dominic, who are you riding with?
Oh, man, I am going to go with Austin Dillon to get it done at Atlanta. I think he finds his way to the front. Dillon will shut up the critics, and I think he's going to make the playoffs with the win at Atlanta. It could come at Daytona. I think Austin Dillon and Brad Keselowski would be guys that you see run up front that haven't really done that this year. The 3-car gets it done at Atlanta.
Okay, so 2 unconventional picks. David, who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. He's lurking there, man. He's a little bit more consistent, and, he needs a win. And, man, I feel like that, Harvick's right there. So, we'll see. Tyler Reddick, after having that momentum, and we see him week in and week out be consistent, we look at Chase Elliott, finished second this past weekend, won the weekend before. So you can never count out Tyler Reddick with all that momentum behind him and energy and just, I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick, but I can assure you that it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be a heck of a race. You know what I mean?
I wonder how many teams are going to take the cars they ran on the road course and run this week in Atlanta, because we already saw Ross Chastain won both his races on a road course and in a super speedway with the same car. Something to think about, with the versatility of this next gen car. Yeah. Time for our Ask David segment in just one moment. Before we do, let's go racing with David Starr, presented by TicketSmarter. TicketSmarter came aboard as the primary sponsor this year on David's 08 Ford Mustang. We want to tell you a little bit more about what they do. TicketSmarter is a national ticket resale marketplace with tickets to over 125,000 live events, including NASCAR and other forms of motorsports. Fans can get tickets to every NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Camping World Truck race throughout the season. Visit TicketSmarter.com for more. That's TicketSmarter.com. Our first question in the inbox this week comes from Pablo. Pablo wants to know, this is for David, me, and Dominic, all three of us. Who is the best driver who never won a Cup Series race? Dominic, you are the historian among us, so just educate us. Who is it?
Wow.
Well, you're too kind. I would say you got to look at guys that have led a lot of laps, guys that have run up front and maybe finished top 10 in points a few times, maybe didn't capture that first win. Two guys I think of are Banjo Matthews and Mike Skinner. Both these guys, okay, they led Cup Series races, but on 4 occasions, they had the most laps led in a Cup race, but never were able to close the deal. I would think guys like that would be at the top of the list. Ted Musgrave finished top 10 in points, I think in 95 or 96, but never won a race, never found victory lane. Joe Ruttman, I think, is another guy. Joe and Mike are both friends of the show. Joe, I think he had told us on the show one of his biggest regrets was not signing with Wood Brothers Racing or turning down an offer from them. And he led a bunch of laps in the 80s. And he's somebody that finished top 10 in points, but could never close the deal. I look at guys like that. And I think that's a great question, Pablo, because we've had a lot of first-time winners, a lot of guys that have run really well, but hadn't closed the deal. And this is the year of closing the deal. But I think those two names stick out to me, Banjo Matthews and Mike Skinner. I'm curious on who you guys' take would be on that question.
Man, but Mike Skinner won Cup races, didn't
he?
No,
he didn't.
He did.
He won twice in Japan. He won the exhibition races, but he never won points awarding races.
Man, I would pick Skinner all day long. What a competitor, man. What a golly, he was a force to be reckoned with. And I am remembering back when he was teammate with Dale Earnhardt. Man, I don't know if they got, from what I heard and being teammates with Mike Skinner for as long as I was, it was kind of interesting to ask him about, hey, man, what was it like being teammates with Dale Earnhardt? And, I think he was a little bit of a thorn in Dale's side, you know what I mean? Because he was so competitive and so I'm shocked. I really thought, I guess I didn't know that Skinner never won a Cup race, man. And, there's several other ones out there, Dom, and you mentioned a lot of them, but man, that's a great question. makes you think because, man, there's been a lot. And when I say a lot, there's been a handful of guys that should have won cup races that never did, that were incredible race car drivers.
To me, besides Mike Skinner, I think that's the correct answer. If there's a correct answer,
Right.
He's the best that never won a cup race. But two other names: Dave Blaney never won a cup race, and with Dave, I know that his cup career wasn't that great, but he was such a great racer. The king of the world of outlaws and all the stuff that he did on short tracks and around America. I mean, Dave Blaney's a hell of a race car driver, just didn't happen to get it done in Cup. Another name, Dick Trickle never won in Cup.
Wow.
Dick Trickle was kind of in mid-pack, mid-tier Cup teams by the time he moved up. But Dick Trickle was a very good race car driver, just never got it done. Those are the two names that come to mind for me.
Just sitting here talking about, and I really didn't know that Dick Trickle never won a cup race because he ran a lot of cup races. And you're talking about probably the best or the top three ever best short track racers ever. But and you look at the next gen car in 2022, if those guys, Mike Skinner, Ted Musgrave, Dick Trickle, I mean, all the guys we're sitting here talking about,
Blaney.
Definitely Dave Blaney, a heck of a driver. But, they didn't have the opportunity to be, whatever situation or opportunities they had, they wasn't equal. And I think this year, 2022, with the next gen car, with all the new winners we have and the parity we have in the sport these days, I just think that the next gen car has really brought the competition together. It's more of a putting it in the driver's hands. The cars are equal. And I think if these guys that we're talking about would have had an opportunity then in their time with a next gen type of race car, that they would have had a lot of wins because they were really good. But at the time, just the equipment and the teams they were with, they just, they were underfunded, didn't have the resources, or, that they wasn't a powerhouse team. But man, but you're talking about, we're mentioning some great race car drivers that I'm kind of shocked that never won a cup race. It's an interesting question.
Another one, more recently, Matt DiBenedetto came awfully close to winning cup races, and every team that DiBenedetto was on, he made better every single one, from Go Fast Racing to Levine to the Wood Brothers. He made the playoffs, but never quite got to victory lane. DiBenedetto's one too. Dom, go ahead.
Man, I'm looking at this list too, and I'm sure, David, you'd really appreciate this because I know you're a really big historian of the sport. I'm going to go down a list of guys that led a bunch of laps, never won in the Cup Series. Jim Vandiver, Richard Childress, Bud Moore, Mike Wallace, Reed Sorensen, Rick Wilson, Joe Millican, Jeff Green, Ted Musgrave, Hut Strickland, Rick Mast. What do you know too, Dave, about guys like G.C. Spencer and John Sears, guys that finished top 10 in points multiple times? G.C. Spencer holds the record for the most top 5 finishes without ever securing a win. 55 times finished inside the top 5, but never won a cup race. Fascinating. So many guys that we could go on with this list.
Absolutely, man. And one that comes to mind, and I don't even know if he's deceased now, but the James Helton drove the 48 car for all those years, had an ARCA team.
He won 2 races, I believe.
Oh, he did win 2. Okay.
But still many I think hundreds of top 10 finishes. Second in points.
You talk about Mike Wallace. Mike's been on our show with us, and Mike drove for Roger Penske, and man, I think he won a couple of poles, very competitive. Kind of interesting, man. It's just really, it's interesting that to go back and look at the record books and see who led a lot of laps but didn't win a race. I mean, we're talking about some great race car drivers.
Kenny never won either.
Kenny Wallace.
Yeah,
man.
Kenny Wallace, Kenny Irwin Jr. Man, so many good names.
But it just goes to show you, it's just about the opportunity to race in the Cup side, any NASCAR, National NASCAR Series, Truck Series, Xfinity Cup. You're talking about the best race car drivers in the world. And, but it's not, it's not equal, you know what I mean? I mean, that's everybody, any short track racer in the country, from a female to a male, they tell you, hey man, I want to be a NASCAR driver. I want to be a NASCAR driver. You win championship, win races, but getting that opportunity to be a professional, earning that opportunity and getting that opportunity doesn't guarantee you wins in NASCAR. You know what I mean? Because the opportunity you might get might not be the powerhouse team that has the resources, the funding, the technology, the engineering to be a winning team, but you're there, you're with the best of the best. So it's interesting, a great question, and interesting to talk about this because, and I think if we were talking about those guys, as those guys had a chance to race this next gen race car, I think they would have wins behind them.
Yeah, well, and it also, I think, makes you look into Tyler Reddick's win this weekend. We were saying just early on how long it took, how close he came so many times. But then when you name how many guys never got to victory lane and went through it, then you start to step back a bit. Okay, maybe we shouldn't be so hard on Tyler Reddick for taking so long to get to victory lane, except when you see that. So 92 starts it took for Tyler Reddick to get victory lane, but when you hear some of those names that never got to victory lane, then it
puts it in perspective.
Definitely.
For sure.
So, with that, that's all for Ask David this week. But we appreciate you all sending in your questions each week on the email inbox. davidstarpodcast@gmail.com is where you can find us there. And big milestone this week, we reached 400 subscribers on YouTube. And so what that means is that people are, every time we put out new clips, not just the full show, but just segments of it, that people are being notified right away. And so we encourage you, if you're not already, subscribe to the show on YouTube, turn on those notifications as well, so you never miss a moment of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Dominic, you're working very hard each week, cutting up those clips and getting stuff out there. Just a little plug for the YouTube page, by the way. It's not just our full show that's up there, but highlight clips, whatever. If you can't catch the full show or want to see the best of, this is a great way to see what we're doing there.
I think so, Tyler. We try to take the best 2 to 4 or 5 clips. We'll talk about it after the show and, hey, what was the best or some of the highlights, and we try to do that for you guys. So it's that ease of access. When you log on to YouTube, there it is. There's the thumbnail. There's the headline. There's what we talked about at that specific point in the show. And we have some great candid conversations on this podcast, and I feel like we get more and more guests and more comfortable. And it's a great show. It's a great atmosphere. Our guests feel comfortable. We're comfortable with each other. And we hope you, the fan, are comfortable too. We are hoping to put out the best content for you guys. And we love doing that every week on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. I have so much fun doing it, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go real quick around the room, Dominic, what do you got going on this weekend?
Man, I'll be here in New Mexico, but I'll be watching from afar and cheering you on, David. Hope you get a great finish this week with you and your team. But won't be in Atlanta this time around, but I'll be out at Pocono in a few weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. How about you, Tyler? Where's the Summer of Jones, or the hashtag Summer of Jones, taking you this week?
The Summer of Jones, hashtag Summer of Jones, heads to my second home of Kansas City this weekend. Spent 6 years up there, and that feels almost as much as home to me as Tulsa does. And so going to go up there, see my sister, and going to go see Machine Gun Kelly in concert. Have you heard of Machine Gun Kelly, David?
I have.
Really? I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked at that. So, yeah, it'll be good. Nice couple days. And then I worked the holiday, so I'm being repaid by that by having Friday off and a little 3-day weekend. So
very nice.
It'll be good. Nice visit up there. David, you're off to Atlanta. And I know you're excited about that, to get that TicketSmarter Ford Mustang back on track.
Man, I'm excited. It's being sick a couple of weeks ago and missing the Nashville race, and man, I'm looking forward to getting back in my Ford Mustang, my TicketSmarter Ford Mustang, and working with my team, and looking forward to trying out the new configuration there at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Hope to bring our TicketSmarter Ford Mustang bring it home with a great finish. And I want to thank Andy Lally. He jumped in our car with Brett Baer and EverFi. They had a 14th place finish this past weekend at Road America, which was awesome. Andy Lally is one of the best road racers in the country these days. And to have him
on our show before.
Yeah, and to have Andy drive our Brett Baer EverFi Ford Mustang this past weekend was awesome. And got involved in a wreck early on, but brought it back home with a great finish of 14th. That was incredible. And man, looking forward to getting to Atlanta on Friday and racing Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a great race, great weekend of racing at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And I'm excited to see all the race fans again.
And you're locked in the field.
Awesome.
So that's
awesome.
Good news on that front. We got to go. As always, subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button as well. We certainly would appreciate that. And follow us on social media, Facebook.com/David Starr Podcast, Twitter @Starr Podcast, and by email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. Dominic Aragón, David Starr, Tyler Jones, put the checkered flag out on this episode, and we'll see you right back here next week here on Let's Go Racing. Come on, everybody.